Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, I'm going to be providing my thoughts on the Phoenix Suns season so far, as well as outlining my expectations for what this team can do as the season continues. However, before I get too far into it, I would like to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Now, without further ado, let's talk about the Suns. So, the Suns are one of the more intriguing teams in the league, as they had a very successful run during the play-in games of the bubble last season, where they won each of their 8 contests, and people had some high hopes for this young team heading into this year. So far, it's kind of worked out, as they made a huge trade for Chris Paul and made a really nice signing of Jay Crowder using their mid-level exception in free agency. However, they did have a little bit of a snafu as the team ran into some health and safety protocol issues that led to them losing a bit of a rhythm, and they went on a bit of a losing streak. The true inspiration for this video was Charles Barkley's statement last night during halftime of their game against the Warriors, which they did win handily, that this is a team without an identity and that he's disappointed in their season so far. I feel a bit different than Charles does, and I'm much higher on this team than I think the general consensus is, so I want to discuss what I think they can do this season. So far, the Suns are 9-8. They are 13th in offensive rating with a 110.8 points per 100 possessions rating, and they're 5th in defensive rating with a 108.0 points allowed per 100 possessions rating. That leaves them with a 2.8 net rating, which I believe is either 8th or 9th. The reason why this team tends to be in some low-scoring matchups is because they play very slow. They're 29th in pace so far this season, playing just 97 possessions per game. That's something that comes along with having Chris Paul on your roster, as he tends to slow the game down and really meticulously attack the defense on that end of the court. So it makes sense that the Suns would be playing at this slower pace. I'm not sure how much that favors Devin Booker and Cam Johnson, two of their young players that seem to really excel in transition. But so far, it's worked out to different levels of success. As I said before, they are 9-8. I think the first player to talk about here is Booker. Booker has missed the last couple games with a hamstring injury, and his absence has been noticeable in a series of losses to the Nuggets last week, one of which they had Booker and the other where they didn't have him. The offensive production and the ease with which they scored was quite different. There was a more varied attack, and the scoring was coming from multiple places in their first loss of that 2-game set. And in the second loss, Chris Paul was forced to really step it up and perhaps step out of his comfort zone a little bit, as he scored 32 points in that game, which is a really nice effort from CP3. But you know that he would be more comfortable taking a few less shots and dishing out a few more assists. Although I do think he had plenty of assists in that game as well. So really just a good performance from Chris Paul in order to keep that game close. But that's not necessarily his preferred style of play. So, Booker's injury has hurt this team recently, and I think that's the primary reason why they've lost a few games. I think that prior to last night, they had lost their past 3 and 4 of their past 5. So, Booker being out definitely impacts that. But when he has been on the court, he's also taken a bit of a step back this season. His points per game stat has gone down from 26.6 points to 22.9. Now, I'm not super worried about that, because more of that is just about him not getting as many touches and not as many shots up than it is about him not knocking down those shots. His percentages have gone down to the slightest degree so far this season. Yeah, they are all slightly worse. 49% from the field last season, 47% this year. 35 last year from 3, 34 this year. 90 from the free throw line last year, 92, and this year 82. So he's taken a step back in the efficiency department, but it's a very slight step back. The primary reason for this is that he has not quite worked out how to play with Chris Paul, how to divvy up the scoring load, and that has led to his general production as a scorer taking a step back. So I'm not super concerned with that. I think that he's going to have big nights, and there's going to be nights where the Suns don't really need him to take as many shots as he has on other occasions. So the scoring isn't what I'm concerned about with Devin Booker so far this year. My bigger concern is with his passing and playmaking stuff. His assists per game has gone down by more than a third, as he's gone from 6.5 assists per game last year to 4.1 this year. Now, that would be expected. When you're playing with Chris Paul, you're not going to have the ball in your hands, and you're not going to be asked to do as much playmaking. Well, that leads to the bigger problem, as Booker has made a leap in turnovers, despite not having the ball in his hands as much because of the addition of Chris Paul, as I said before, as he's gone from 3.8 turnovers per game to 4.1 turnovers per game. That is a big troublesome for Booker, as the fact that he isn't being asked to do as much as a distributor and he's still turning the ball over more, although it is the slightest bit more, is a little bit problematic. Last season, he was essentially dishing out close to 1.75 assists for every turnover he had. This season, that's essentially 1-to-1. And Booker's going to have to improve in terms of taking care of the ball if this team is going to be truly competitive. However, I think he can figure that out. Overall in his career, especially in the past 2 seasons, turnovers haven't been a huge problem for him. Yes, they've been a high number of TOs per game, but he's also been dishing out quite a few assists per game. So I think that we will see that number regress and see him take care of the ball a little bit better. Not too much to be concerned with here for Devin Booker, as you can tell by what I've said so far, and I think that he will improve on his play as the season goes on. The same can be said for Chris Paul, who I actually think has been quite good despite having a decrease in points per game. He's gone from 17.6 to 14.8, so it's not like it's a huge drop-off either. The primary reason for that is that he hasn't hit threes at the same level that he was last year. Last season, for the season as a whole, he shot 37% from beyond the arc on 4 or 5 attempts per game. This season, that's dropped down to 30% from 3 on 2 or 3 attempts per game. Now, that's not a huge problem for CP3, as his pull-up jumper from 3 isn't much of a weapon. He tends to shoot more from the mid-range when it comes to that shot. And he's not going to be playing off the ball too much either, so he's not going to be asked to do catch and shoots all that much. But if they do want to get Devin Booker more involved and have him be the primary initiator in the offense, then CP3 is going to have to shoot the ball better than 30% in order to adequately space out the floor. I'm not super worried, as this stands out as much more of an outlier throughout his career than the 37% season was. He's been much more in line with that for his career as a whole than the 30%, so I think that he'll probably bounce back, regress to the mean, and start shooting the ball a bit better. If he doesn't, though, that certainly does hurt the Suns and could be a reason why their offense continues to middle in that 13 to 15 range. The third option, Paul also has done a terrific job in distributing the ball, as he has been a large reason for the improvements from Mikhail Bridges and Cam Johnson to kick off the season. He's actually improved his assists, going from 6.7 to 8.5, while his turnover numbers have stayed essentially the same from last season. So I'm really impressed by what I've seen from Chris Paul, and you are immediately seeing the returns from that massive blockbuster trade that the Suns made this past fall. Next guy here is Deandre Ayton. Now, Ayton was expected to be the third option for this Suns team to open up the season, and right now he's averaging less points per game than Mikhail Bridges. Part of that can be attributed to Bridges' breakout season, but Ayton also needs to be a lot more aggressive on the offensive end of the floor. In terms of rebounding, he's been great. This has been his career high, as he's putting up 12.4 rebounds per game and is genuinely one of the best rebounders in the league. But outside of that, this season has seen him really step back in terms of aggression. He's shooting 59% from the field, which is actually the highest percent of his 3-year career so far, but he's still averaging less points per game because he's just much more hesitant to get shots up. He went from averaging 18.2 points per game to last season to 14.2 this season. Now, he's been playing a bit better offensively of late. He's been more aggressive and looking to score the ball at a higher level than he was to kick off the season. But there are still games where he goes without taking more than 6 or 8 shot attempts, and I think that he probably should be in the 10 to 12 range day in and day out, just because of his strength as a rebounder, especially on the offensive end, where he's going to grab between 3 and 5 offensive rebounds per game, as well as a rim runner in the pick and roll, and someone who can also do a bit in the low post as a scorer for himself. So Ayton needs to look to be more aggressive as a scorer, and he also needs to improve on his defense. He's had a few games where he's had block parties. Actually, he's had one game. It was against the Nuggets. He put up 5 blocks, and it was really impressive. Or maybe that wasn't against the Nuggets. I forget. But in his last 5 games, these are his block numbers. 5, 0, 2, 0, 0. He needs to be a lot more consistent in terms of protecting the rim. In that game where he had 5 blocks, he was terrific, as I felt like he was contesting every shot. He was really influential in forcing opponents to change their shot. And I was really impressed with what I saw. But then I dug into his game log a little bit more, and that is the only game so far this season in which Ayton has blocked more than 2 shots. That can't happen from a guy who's playing 32 minutes per game at the 5 spot. Ayton's going to have to protect the rim better, and he's going to have to be more consistent blocking shots. Last season, he was at a very respectable mark at 1.5 blocks per game, and I thought that he had a chance to take a jump in that area this season. However, he's gone down, as he's averaging 1.1 blocks per game. So that's another area, along with the scoring aggressiveness, that Ayton is going to have to do better. However, I'm a Deandre Ayton fan. I'm willing to bet on him making that jump, get back into that 18 to 20 points per game scoring level, and at least start to be a little bit more aggressive on the defensive end as a rim protector. Another reason why his blocks per game may have gone down is that Mikhail Bridges is greatly improved as a weak side rim protector. But Ayton is someone that this Suns team needs to be contributing at high levels for them to be successful, and I think that we'll see him get to that level very soon. Mikhail Bridges is the next guy here. He's taken a huge jump so far this season, and a large reason for that has been his improvement from beyond the arc. Last season, he shot 36% from 3. This year so far, he's shooting 43%. That has led to his scoring making a jump from 9.1 points per game to 14.9. I think that he's a very underrated candidate for the Most Improved Player award, and if it weren't for significant jumps by guys like Jaylen Brown, Jeremy Grant, and Christian Wood, he would be getting much higher consideration for that. Last night, he was a large reason why this Suns team was able to win. He guarded Steph Curry throughout the game and did a pretty solid job, and he was also able to pour in 20 points on the offensive end. So as a 3-and-D wing, he's really figuring out his role. I do think that the 3 is probably going to come back to earth. He'll probably start shooting it at more like a 38 to 40% mark from 3, regressing back to the mean a little bit instead of being in that mid-40s. But I don't think that that will spell doom for Mikhail, because teams are going to start closing out on him harder than they have so far, and I have a lot of faith in him as an off-the-dribble scorer, as he has flashed some ability to do that so far this season. I'm a big Mikhail Bridges fan, and he's someone that I am willing to bet on being a borderline all-star level player for years to come. So I think that this jump from him is very real, and I think that he can really help to raise the ceiling for this Phoenix Suns team. His fellow wing player, young wing, I should say, has also made a jump in Cam Johnson. Johnson has raised his scoring average from 8.8 points per game to 11.7, and that's despite him being in a bit of a slump from 3 to open up the year, as last season he shot 39%. This year he's sitting at 36%. The reason why he's improved is that he is ridiculously efficient as an inside scorer. He's shooting 62.6% on 2-point attempts so far this season, which is a number you rarely see from players outside of big men. He's terrific in transition, where he's able to finish at a high level, and he's also a very good cutter who is able to take advantage of the up the line defense opposing teams are forced to play on him because of his ability as a shooter. I think Cam Johnson is a very naturally talented player on the offensive end of the floor, and someone who's going to be able to give this team a nice amount of contributions night in and night out. With him, Bridges, and Jay Crowder coming off the bench for now, although I do think we could see Crowder reinstated into the starting lineup once Dario Saric is cleared to play again after his battle with the health and safety protocols. I think we could see Crowder reinstated in the starting lineup because the Suns will need a bit more scoring off the bench instead of it being just that more toughness. Crowder fits better next to Frank Kaminsky when Frank is the backup five because Kaminsky really struggles on defense, and Crowder's able to make up for that. Saric is better defensively, so having the more offensively gifted guy in Johnson could help them out. So I'm sure that spot is going to fluctuate a little bit as the season continues, but the Suns currently have 6 players averaging double-digit points per game, and perhaps even 7, as I'm not sure what exactly Cam Payne is averaging, but he has also been terrific. This starting 5 is really good, and the 6th man of Crowder / Johnson off the bench is going to give them some really good minutes as well at the wing positions. They also are pretty deep, as they have players like Cam Payne, Javon Carter, Langston Galloway, Etuan Moore, Abdel Nader, Dario Saric, even Frank the Tank, who can come off their bench and give them some good minutes. I think that this is probably the 5th best team in the Western Conference behind the 2 LA teams, Denver and Utah, and I think that they have a chance to move up from there and could probably beat someone like Denver in a 7-game series. I would be a little nervous about the Jokic matchup, as I'm not real sure that Deandre Ayton would be fully capable of guarding Nikola Jokic, but I think that they certainly have better guard play with Booker and Paul. And on the wings, I think I'd probably rather have Mikhail Bridges and Cam Johnson and Jay Crowder than Michael Porter Jr., Paul Millsap, and who's the guy coming? Oh, Will Barton. So I think the Suns could potentially beat the Nuggets in a 7-game set against the Jazz. I think that Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley would be a pretty even matchup for Booker and Paul. Booker and Paul probably have a bit of an advantage there, but that would certainly be an exciting backcourt matchup to watch. In the front court, you would have Bogdan Bogdanovic and Royce O'Neal taking on Bridges and Johnson, probably another close to stalemate, and then Gobert against Ayton. That would be a very fun matchup as well. Gobert is probably the better player, but I don't know how much either guy would be producing offensively because Gobert does struggle on offense, and Ayton probably wouldn't be able to do anything with Gobert guarding him. So that's another really interesting one. I think that against the Clippers and Lakers, this team probably would struggle, and I don't really think that those are teams that the Suns can beat. But we just went over the teams that I view as 3rd and 4th in the West, and I think the Suns could beat them. So this is a team that has a very real chance to win a playoff series, and if they get hot from beyond the arc, which they're fully capable of, when you have guys who can shoot it like Booker, Paul, Bridges, Johnson, Crowder, you have a chance to get hot in a series and give you a chance to pull off a huge upset. So do I think it's impossible that they could beat the Lakers or the Clippers? No, I really don't. I think they'd probably be more likely to beat the Clippers than the Lakers because the Anthony Davis matchup on this team is pretty scary, but shooting can swing a series, and this Suns team is pretty darn good at it. So definitely a very interesting team. I think they'll probably end up being something like the 4th, 5th, or 6th seed in the West, depending on how their season continues. But I really like the Suns, and I think that they are a good team that has a very real chance to compete in the playoffs this year and perhaps even win a series or two. Let me know what your thoughts on this video were in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my takes on the Suns? Do you think that this team is going to be a team that can win a playoff series? Let me know. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. That's going to be it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you all again very soon.